Hey, everybody. Today is a very special publication from Journeys Through Time. This is Clementine Renner and Ruby Joe Wilbanks talking about the history of the museum. It is most 90% of this recording is those two with Carolyn Cunningham talking about the Station Master's House Museum and what took place to make it all happen and to have what we have today. This is a treasure of a recording, and you will all enjoy the stories about bringing the caboose onto the property, attaching the depot to the house. What's in the red barn there? If you haven't been to the museum, you may or may not. But if you have been to the museum, you may or may not have visited the red barn. What's in there? Well, there's a mule train in there, or what used to be called the Shedeck mule train, which was a covered wagon pulled by mules and followed along with a van behind it. So I could go on and give away all the details, but you just need to listen to this. Enjoy. And again, we're going to be interviewing some of our current old folks here, senior citizens, within the next few weeks at the Hansford County Pie Society, Old Hansford Pie Society. And we do need all of our listeners to be aware that you may have family that you want recorded, and we're happy to be the ones that can do that and record that oral history. Enjoy. Have a great day. Thank you.
Welcome back to Hansford Information, and visiting with us this morning are Ruby Joe Wilbanks and Clementine Renner, and these two ladies are going to attempt to straighten me out on the proper name of Hansford County Historical Commission. It didn't all start out that way, though, did it, Clementine?
No. In 1956 is when we first started this with the name of the Hansford County Historical Survey Committee, and some people today still refer to it as such. But when we got together, we decided that we would change the name, for the purpose was that we would have this Hansford County Historical Commission rather than the Survey Committee. In that way, all the things in the museum would be under the thumb of the Hansford County Commissioners, and if anything happened, they would have charge of it, and so it wasn't an individual thing. And Johnny Lee had appointed a number of people earlier in the year, and out of these people that he had chosen, and he had appointed, he chose. Johnny Lee was the first one to go into this. Tom Jones was chosen as our president, and Mrs. Archer, Mrs. Gertrude Archer, Gertie Archer, as Aunt Gertie as we referred to her, and Olin Sheets, and who else was it?
Well, yourself.
And myself. We were chosen to be the officers at this time. And when Johnny called me and asked me whether I would serve on this, I thought, well, I don't understand what it's all about. So he explained it, and I said, well, will it do any good for Hansford County? He said, certainly. He said, at this time, we're the only ones that do not have such a commission and me to serve. So I said, well, if it'll help, I'll do it. So I've been on there since 1956.
What was the original purpose? What were your goals back then?
Well, just to preserve our community, our Hansford County. Let the state at least know that we were up here, and do all we could to preserve things that were really interesting that day and are today.
And on the original group, what did you accomplish?
Well, we didn't accomplish too much. We did start out with markers. We marked different things that were very important. Our first one, I think, was the one down that is down by the Hansford Cemetery, the huge marker down there. That was the first one. It was the Dodge City Tascosa Trail.
Okay.
And I want you people to understand that now. That marker is something else. It is granite. It was hauled up here by Olin Sheets from Oklahoma, and we set it up down there. The other markers are lovely, but this one is different. And we really had a time getting it up here and getting it set. And I can still remember the day that that marker was set. We couldn't get a hold of Gwenford Lackey, and she needed to be there because she was interested and had done a lot. So Joyce, her daughter-in-law, got hold of her by way of the telephone or something, and Gwenny came. She'd been out with her cattle, and here she came, but she was there, and it was a wonderful day that we had our first marker. And then after that, we went on to other things, and we decided that we ought to have a museum in this county. And we didn't know just how to go about it. We were broke, didn't have any money to go on. We'd spent all we had on this marker. So we decided that we just go ahead and buy a place if we could find one. So that's how we got started on our museum in this county.
Well, a little bird told me that you and your husband Gus were very instrumental in getting that all accomplished. That you basically bought the house and signed the note and got the ball rolling. Is that kind of how it all started?
Well, we didn't exactly do it that way. We had some donations. Gwenny Lackey was the first one to give a donation, and I tell you what, after we had paid it off at $75 a month for so long, Gus and I decided that was enough of that. So we paid off the rest of it. We really didn't pay all of it by any means.
Now, this is the station master's house that's on the corner of Townsend and 2nd, is that?
30 South Townsend.
30 South Townsend.
Mm-hmm.
Was that always right there on that corner, or was it located down at the railroad tracks?
No, as far as we understand, it was the original station master or the depot agent's house where they lived in. It was their home for all of them. It was built along about 1919 when the railroad came through Spearman. And up until we purchased it, it was always the railroad house.
Tell who owned the house, Clementine. You purchased the house from who?
Well, when Mary Lou Wysong was working here as at the Chamber of Commerce, she knew that we would like to have a museum, but so far we hadn't had any chance to get any. So she was down to the consumer sales one day, and she heard the rumor that it was for sale, and that a man working down there, Lloyd Roberts, he said, when they were talking about it, he said, I guess I'll just buy that house. And somebody said, oh, you won't buy that house. What would you do with it? He said, I will buy it. So they went on carrying on like that. And so he said, all right, I'll just put in a bid on it. He put in $3,500, and lo and behold, the Santa Fe took it up, and Duke Roberts was the owner of another house. So he said he didn't have any use whatsoever with that house. They lived in the countryside out there. So when Mary Lou heard about this, she came right away and told us about it. So we went to see Duke, and he said, well, I'll have to go out home, he said, and see what Rose and the kids think about it. But he said, sounds good to me. So he went out, and they decided they didn't need the house. So he came back to town, and the next day the Historical Commission had a house. We bought it. We paid $3,500 for it, and like we said, paid it out, $75 payments a month.
Well, I got in on that house business because Duke's daughter was going to move down from Colorado, and I think that, and I had been looking for a place to live and had difficulty finding a place to live, and he thought, well, if you've had this much trouble, Glenda's going to have. And I think that's probably what originally got him thinking about putting a bid on it. But you're right, he never in his wildest imagination thought he'd get that bid or it'd come through, and I think he was as shocked as everybody else. But he was real thrilled that you all did eventually wind up with it. From that point, what did you all do? Where have you gone from there?
Well, you see, the house had to be renovated, and we had, well, the first thing we needed was somebody that knew something about a museum. I thought you could just put some things in there and everything would just turn out fine, you know. And Bob, what's his name? Crawford, over at Groover, their daughter, Linda, was here. And that's what she was majoring in college, was things like this. And she offered to come over and help us. And if she wasn't a help, I don't know who could have been. We knew nothing, and she knew it all. And she came in, and that's how we really, really got started on working at this museum. And all the different things that you see in there today is certainly different from what it was that day, but it was a beginning, and she helped us so much.
I imagine that there were quite a number of paperwork and everything. As the old story goes, the bureaucracy of paperwork is. How long did it actually take you from the date you bought it from Lloyd Roberts for it to be actually open? Do you remember?
Well, it was open in 1975. Mm-hmm. Was that the official?
Yeah. It didn't take us too long. See, this was in 56 when this all started, but it wasn't until later, in 76 when, like Ruby Joe said, that we really got to work on it. It didn't take us too long. We just had real good luck. We asked for some help when we were working on the inside about painting, and lo and behold, on a Monday morning, there were a number of people there, including the Baptist minister. I don't know who he was, but he was there. And he helped paint, and then later on, there was other painting to be done, and wasn't it the fire department?
Volunteer firemen came in. It's about 1984, I think,
and
that they came
they painted in there, and they painted at night. So it was great.
That was after the depot was attached, though, when they painted, yeah.
That's right. You actually started out with the house and then moved the depot. Was that the first addition to the museum?
Yes. When the Santa Fe Railroad closed their route through here, they gave the depot donated it to the museum. And it was moved in January of, what do we want to say, 1982 maybe. A man from Liberal who had a moving business moved the depot, and it was 10 below zero the day he moved the depot. Channel 4 came over and did a story on it, which was real good. This fella had a kind of a handlebar mustache, and icicles were hanging from his mustache while he was out there instructing his crew. And that's a red letter day too.
It sounds like it.
Well, and you see, before we could move this depot onto the museum, the state required that there be some differential there, that they didn't think that it was all one building. So we had to build another building in between to show that the house, the station master's house, and the depot were not one building. So that was another thing that we put in there. And they dug the basement, and Preston and his crew didn't dig the thing, but they finished it. Just think of all that cement that they put down there.
You're talking about Preston Smith and his
Smith
son
and
Archie. Okay.
Yes.
And at a reasonable price. Couldn't believe it. They went down to Amarillo, and they were trying to get a bid on it, and they said the price that we had up here, and they said, well, go back home and let them do it. I said, we can't do that. So there's another thing good for Preston.
Well, you know, we're all hometown people, so I think we kind of pinch in and do what we can. I think that's we've mentioned that on this program several times in the last few weeks, that's one quality that Spearman has. So I think that's probably what they did also. What was the next acquisition or the next step, Ruby Joe?
Well, after the depot was added, another one of Clementine's dreams that came to reality. She always wanted a replica of Old Zulu, and so we started planning and working for that. And finally, it came to pass. So we have our Zulu building. Then in a few years ago, I can't remember all my dates, but Dolly McQuarter called us and said they had the Shedeck children had their folks' wagon train that they used in the wagon train, mule train. It was so famous for many years.
Was that the Rolling Plains?
Yes, the Rolling Plains mule train. And they had it and would like to donate it to us. And I said, well, we don't have a place to store it, and they did want it under a roof, which we could see. So we started in planning for a wagon barn. So we got that. But first, though, we got our caboose, our Santa Fe caboose, before the wagon barn.
There's an interesting story about that caboose. Clementine, can you tell us about that one? I think it kind of went halfway around the world, didn't it, before it wound up in Spearman?
Well, Joe, you know that better. You tell them about that.
Well, I think we probably all know it. But, yes, we had a time of acquiring this caboose. And Mr. Mears, who was the agent in Wichita, Kansas, he helped us considerable. Also, Mr. Nail, who was the Santa Fe Railroad was still in operation at Perryton, and he helped us do phone conversations and everything. And finally, we did get it, and it was on its way, and it got to Amarillo. They thought it was a working caboose, so they sent it to Brownsville, Texas. And Mr. Nail from Perryton, he got on the phone again and said, send that back. It goes to a museum up here. So they sent it to Shattuck, and since there wasn't a everyday train coming through here, why, they told him that it would be probably 2 or 3 days or maybe longer before they could get it back to Spearman. And they would put it on a siding for us. So in about a week, it was sitting out there, and it did need cleaning. We had some help in getting the inside clean, and Irvin Boyd and J.D. cleaned on the outside. Then we had 30 days to get it moved to its location. Santa Fe Railroad gave us 30 days to let it sit there. So time was running out. Finally, the Baker and Taylor crew voluntarily moved it to where it is now. They took their big trucks and they just picked it up, brought it on up there to the museum, and the caboose part itself was hanging in the air. They had to go back and get the trucks, or the wheels as we know it. They loaded them up, brought them, just set them right over the fence just like it was a little toy, and put that caboose right down on it.
Do you remember any of that crew, who some of those men were that did that work?
The late Red Hamilton. He was
Hamilton, or was it Mayfield?
Who is Murmurs?
I think it's Mayfield.
Mayfield. Yes, it would be. Yes.
I think that's who it is.
He passed away maybe a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm.
Well, I had heard that it was quite a task to get it on the actual site. Who did the track? Because I know it's sitting on a piece of track.
Yes,
and
our men on the museum board did the track. Gus Renner and Irvin Boyd and J.D. and probably Harry Stump. We just have such a few workers, and they did the track, and the Perriton donated some of the. I don't think they donated the track. We got the track out of Shattuck, maybe. That they donated. They knew what we were doing, and so they donated part of that. And then the ballast that's there, someone donated that.
Did we get a correct name?
Yep.
Whitefield, Red Whitefield.
Whitefield. I'm very sorry.
I am too, because I was sitting here and I knew it was the last part of it was field, but I got the wrong one. Red Whitefield.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thanks, whoever the listener was, for calling that in.
We certainly appreciated their help, and they did this all voluntarily. Moved it on Sunday, and they just acted like it was everyday job.
Well, who was it that dug the basement? It was a company too.
I can't recall at the moment.
But that too was donated. The work was donated. And all in all these great big jobs, people have come out for that.
Okay. Let's take a real quick break. Welcome back to Hansford Information. We're visiting this morning with Ruby Jo Wilbanks and Clementine Renner, and we're visiting about the Station Master's House Museum. And we had determined that a gas company had dug the basement. We were talking about that right before we went on, but like a lot of people who donate their time, they ask that they not be mentioned. So just a big thank you to that company out there. We talked, or we're fixing to talk about the schoolhouse. That's another part of your museum complex. How did that all come about?
Oh, well, the 20th Century Club, they have a project each year, the way I understand, and Verna Gale Kime was kind of the chairman of this, and they found the little Paladure School that used to be up on the close to where our Paladure Dam is, and it had been used at one time as a school up there for several years. Then it was moved to Walker. It was used as a freight office, way station, I guess you'd say, at the Berry Green Company. Then they used it for a post office for a number of years. And then the Drakes, Sandy and Otto Drake, they acquired it, and it was just used there for a storage house for them. They had fertilizer and things like that in it. So the study club, they purchased that. Well, Sandy and Otto donated it, and they moved it. The study club did.
There was quite a bit of work to be done on that building, wasn't there?
Enormous work. Yes, it was. It was just had been in disrepair. The floor was good. The walls had to be completely sheetrocked, and 30 years of blow dirt from the Dust Bowl days was in the roof, and it was getting pretty saggy, and we was afraid to use the original ceiling, I'll put it that way.
There's quite a bit of different items in there also. Is that where Mr. or Dr. Gibner's equipment was, or was it Gibner's? Whose is it?
No, not in the school.
Okay.
Dr. Gibner's has been loaned to us by Woodrow and Lois, and it's in our Zulu building. Clementine can tell you more about Matilda because she worked with her on the school furnishings.
Matilda Reamer
Intrican
was the teacher down in the school down around where Steele's. It was on the Steele Ranch or thereabouts, I'll say. She taught there. Well, the first teacher, they only had two teachers. The first teacher was Mrs. Olin Sheets, Edith. She taught there for a couple of years, and then Matilda took it, and she was the last one that taught there. But we didn't have very many pupils out there at that time. That all there were the children that worked, the people that worked around there, the hands. But you know, it was the strangest thing when we got the little schoolhouse finished with repair, as Ruby Joe said. Then we got to thinking, well, we need to get that teacher, the last teacher that we had. So Matilda graciously volunteered to come and do her part in it. And well, then we got to rounding up the pupils. And of the 6 pupils that she had, Matilda, 4 of them were at our open house when that little schoolhouse was dedicated.
Isn't that wonderful?
And we have the little benches in there, and she knew exactly in which seat each one of these pupils sat. So we put the names on the seat, and then we invited Edith's, not Edith, but Edith's daughter from Amarillo. And we invited her to come because it was her mother that taught for the first time. And she was there, and it was really a lovely, lovely day to see those people back here again.
And by the way, just a point of interest, I saw Matilda Intrican 2 weekends ago. I was over at the Claremont Retirement Village visiting Emma Lou Collins, and walked through the lobby, and I looked at this lady and I said, I know you, but I couldn't bring to mind her name. I didn't realize she was over there, and I said, are you from Spearman? And she said yes, and we began to visit, and I'm hoping to get over there and tape an interview with her for one of these.
Well, she was really gracious, you know, to come back up here. She'd already moved to Amarillo, but it didn't matter. She came and gave a lot of history.
Well, we're almost out of time, but I want to know what your dreams are for the future.
Clementine can fill you in on some of that.
I've got a lot of dreams, as usual, and hope that they come true as much as the ones that we've had in the past. We want an outhouse. Now, we've mentioned that before, and some people will laugh and say, well, what is wrong with that person? But we want it, and we want a dugout. It could be a complete dugout, or it could be a half dugout. A half dugout would really be good, because that's what people lived in back in the days when I was a child. And I don't know, we've got other things that we need to get, but those 2 are very important to us right now.
Well, I wonder if there are any outhouses left. I always heard of all the kids in Spearman that would go get them and drag them down Main Street as a prank and leave them. So
we've had several offers, but locations for some, but they have been in such state of disrepair that they've been unable to be moved.
But one of these days, somebody will give us one that can be repaired. We'll get it down there, too.
Okay.
That's really the dream of Helen Boyd.
Yes.
So bad.
Or Jenny Blankenship.
Yeah, Jenny, too.
Come on over. Cindy Blackman came in, and she's a part of this too, because you're a new member, aren't you?
Cindy's one of our main helpers. I'll put it that way. She graciously came up yesterday. We had 60 second graders to go through the museum, and when you try to run 60 second graders along that age in about 30 minutes, it's a chore.
I got a feeling there's some stories behind that one too. Is there one last thing you'd like to tell our listeners that we might have forgotten?
Well, I would like to say that at the present time, we're in the process of having the buildings painted. And Charles Eaton is doing the work, and he has started on it. And if you drive by, well, you can see that it's been a real hard job. He had to remove all the loose paint that he could possibly do, and then go about the other work. So if there's anybody that's going by and think that they'd like to help us financially, why, we appreciate it a lot. It costs a lot, as everyone knows.
And we want to thank all of our donors over the years who have contributed to keeping the museum going. It's a chore to do, but we've had lots of good people that helped us.
One thing I did forget, you've got a wooden Indian down there on that corner. Does anybody know how that came about real quick?
Well, it was one man came came through the country, that was his job of doing that. And I don't know whether he's still living or not. He went down on the South Plains, but he did that with a chainsaw. And it was a pretty warm day, and every little bit he'd have to go back in the house and cool off the saw, he said. And he just reared back with that thing and really went to work. And now he's gone. We want to get the other tree the same way, but in a different way, cowboy. But he's not here anymore.
Surely there's somebody out there that does that. Anything else?
Can't think of anything right now.
Okay. Well, we want to thank both of you ladies for coming and catching us up on the Hansford County Historical Commission and the Station Master's House Museum. It's a wonderful place to visit. If you have not taken the time to go down, do so. I think it'll take you back in time and with a lot of very good memories. And we've been visiting this morning with Ruby Jo Wilbanks and Clementine Renner. And that's it for Hansford Memories.